Hey guys, I'm Amaroth, and in this video series we'll take a look at CreatureDisplayIDs. What are CreatureDisplayIDs? Well, whenever you have any sort of NPC, that NPC has DisplayID, which sets up what model is that NPC using, what texture, and so on. It actually comes a little bit deeper. There are sounds included, there are things like equipment, and so on. There are many settings we will need to cover up, and I will make a whole video series about this as it was requested by a couple of you. So let's get to it. What is DisplayID good for? Well, not just for NPCs, obviously. DisplayIDs are important for shapeshift spells, for morph spells, for example, for mounts as well, for taxi paths in certain way. DisplayIDs are also important for morph command and so on. So you may need to use CreatureDisplayID for multiple purposes, not just for an actual NPC. Now, all models used by NPCs are usually in one of those two categories, either character or creature. Character models are models of races, and races can have, among other extra possibilities and features, they can have equipment. So if you want to make any sort of humanoid with equipment, you will need to use character model. And we will cover up characters a little bit later in this series. Just note that I have made dedicated tool for creating character NPCs to make it quicker and easier for you. You can find that tool on MCNet, and I will link it and speak about it in another video. So let's assume that you want to use creature model. You can actually use MTUs from different folders than just creature. You may use tree as a CreatureDisplayID. You can use anything, but creature models are those animated which are actually supposed to be used as NPCs. So we will take a look at them right now. We've got this wolf, and let's say that we want to have such wolf but with different texture. So first step is opening model viewer and finding that wolf model, which can be a little bit tedious. In this case, I know already that it's Saberwork model, this one. So this is model I'm looking for. So you need to find model of creature you are using. There's another way of finding this out. You can get its display ID by NPC info command, and you can see that it's this display ID. You can then go to DisplayInfo.dbc, go to that display ID. It's, I believe, yeah, this one. Here is model ID, that's this one. Then go to creature model data, and here we've got path to our model. So this is model of our NPC. So we have found model of our NPC, and that's this one in this case. And the second step would be finding out model ID, which we already know from here. So you may just open creature model data and search for Saberwork or whatever you are using at the moment. But you need to know ID of model of your creature. That's the most important thing. Now, if you want to use model which isn't in this DBC, you need to create a new record here. I will cover that up in another video yet again. So let's assume that you either can do it on your own, or that you want to use model which is already in CreatureModelData.dbc. If you are reporting something, creating new model or whatever else, you will need to edit this DBC as well. But in case your model is already here and you are fine with its setting, you just need ID from here. So it's this one, 2618. And now we would like to use, for example, this texture. Let's say that we like this texture. We want to use this model with this texture as an NPC. Now, the most simple way of doing this is just using BlizzLike DisplayID, but we can encounter a problem with this. Let's just search for work light texture. Search is Ctrl F, I believe. Work underline light. And we are screwed. No results found. Why is that? Because Blizzard has never actually made DisplayID with this model, or rather with this texture used. This texture you can see here isn't actually used in Wrath of the Witch King. at least as far as I know. Well, there's no display ID which would be using this texture. So this model and texture combination doesn't just exist in game, but we want to use it. So what we need to do is create a new display ID with this model and this texture. So how do we do that? Well, the most simple way is finding actually just some display ID which already uses this model. So in this case, Creature Model Data, I will just find that model ID again, 2618. So now I just want display IDs with this model. And you can see that there are two textures used and some settings around here. We don't need to worry about too much of it, but we will use one of these as a template. For example, this one. So I will just copy this line, create a new line because you want to create a new display ID, paste it here, and we've got copy of the display ID here on our new ID. But we will want to edit it and we will want to use different texture. So in this case, we want to use this texture. What I usually do is that I just export it like this with my export folder, and it's this one, so I can just copy its name to make sure that I don't mistype anything. You can see that there are actually two textures used. Just to explain this DBC quickly, this is ID or display ID in this case. This is model ID, we already know that from Creature Model Data, so this is ID of our model. Sound ID, sounds are actually in Creature Model Data as well. So if you are okay with default sounds, when you kill something or fight it, you have heard these sounds. You hear those sounds when you fight something, kill something, damage something. It is just doing sounds in combat. And those sounds are set up for that model in CreatureModelData.dbc. So if you are okay with these default sounds for that model, just leave 0 here because that's just what works. Otherwise, you would want to override those sounds with some your own ID from different display ID or your custom settings, whatever else. So usually you would use just 0 here. Extended display info ID, and that's something you don't need to worry about right now. And this is just for creatures which have equipment, so for character models only. So we are not making NPC with character models, so this is just 0 always. Now creature scale, for some reason Blizzard tends to use all kinds of scales in this DBC, but you can actually set up scale to an NPC in creature template in database, and that's what I prefer to do, so I usually use scale 1. Opacity 255 is obviously the default one or the most used one, but if you want to make some sort of ghost, and in our case we probably want to make this a little bit ghost-ish, some specter wolf or something like that. So in that case, maybe we want to lower opacity and make it a little bit more transparent, or a little bit transparent at all. Now textures. All models of creatures can use up to 3 textures. If textures aren't hard-coded for that model, which comes down to especially models which aren't intended to be used as creatures. So you, for example, this grass, let's say that you would want to use this grass as NPC. You can, but it has hard-coded texture, which means that you wouldn't be setting any texture here. You can, but it wouldn't make any difference. But creatures always have at least one texture, or nearly always have at least one texture, which can be set up via DBC. And this model has 2 textures. Now some models have 1, some models have 3. For example, this dragon here, you can see that it has actually 3 different textures, and all of them are set up in DBC. Now, if a creature has multiple textures, you need to make sure that all of them which are used, which are to be set up in DBC, are set up actually in DBC. So if creature has 2 textures, you need to use 2 textures here. Now there's just one problem. If some creature has multiple textures, and you can see that many of them have, it may be a little bit tricky to figure out uh, in what order should those textures go. They usually are numbered like this: Greyskin 1, 2, and 3. So you know that this is the first one, this is the second one, this is the third one. But sometimes you don't have that luxury and you need to figure out in which order those textures go. The most straightforward way is just trial and error. There are different ways, but trial and error, just try it. If it is correct order, it works. If it isn't correct order, something will be off. For example, you will have body texture on creature's wings or something like that. So you will just switch those textures and find out in which order should they go. In this case, we've got just two textures, and actually, in our case, we will use for both texture slots the same texture. By the way, this is just a name of texture. Notice that there is no BLP or something like that. It is just name of file, and those textures are always supposed to be in the same directory as creature model. So this is in Creature Saberwork directory, Saberwork MQ, and all those textures should be in MPQs in Creature Saberwork. So if you want to make a new custom texture for some model, you need to get it into this path, into the path with that model. So the DBC is just getting a name of file, and it is looking for that file in directory where the model is, okay? So you got three texture sorts, and that's how textures work. Now there's portrait texture that's rarely used. I have never used it actually. I don't even know for sure how it works. I haven't retested it at all. Unit blood level or blood level ID, and now there are values -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 used. I have tested all of them and it didn't seem to make any difference whatsoever to me. So I think that this field is actually ignored by game client, or it is overdone by something else. I don't know for sure, but you should be able to be fine with just default settings. So -1 or 0 or something should be fine. Okay, you probably don't have to worry about this field at all. What you may want to worry about is blood ID. Blood ID, if you use 0, I believe that the model settings or model's default setting is used, but usually you would want to override it or make sure that it is the one what you are looking for. Blood level is what we have taken a look at. That's something ignored, but blood is ID of unit blood.dbc. And when you take a look into unit blood.dbc, you'll find out that we've got actually 4 blood colors. There's red, there's green, there's black, and then there's none. So you can use any of these 4 and it will work fine. Or you can perhaps create a new custom one, your own one if you want to. So we can use either 1 that's red, 2 that's green, or 3 that's black blood, or we can use 4 if we don't want to have any blood coming out of that model at all. So when I just respawn this, you can't really see it right now on this model because it has just 1 HP, whatever, but whenever you are hitting some creature, blood is coming out of that creature, and color of that blood is set up in this field. Now this field isn't really important NPC sound ID for us, for our case, because we want to make some wolf which isn't supposed to speak. But if you want to have any creature which is speaking to players when they click on it, that hello, greetings, and so on, that's what is set up here. So so these sound IDs here are for combat sounds, you know, screams and death sounds and so on. But this is actually when players click on that creature, and this is used only if creature is friendly. So if you want to make any sort of friendly creature or NPC which is supposed to talk to players, vendor or guard or whatever else, this is what you want to toy around with. I usually just copy sound IDs from someone who sounds the way I want. Might do for character for character humanoid NPCs is taking care of this. Now if you want to make just some random creature which is supposed to be killed or that isn't supposed to speak, or which isn't going to be friendly towards players, you don't need to worry about this field at all. I'm just saying that it is really dumb when whole city of custom humanoid NPCs is completely silent and no one says think when you click on it. So if you are making humanoids, make sure that you don't have 0 here, that you have set up something correct there. But for creatures, for just random mobs or critters or whatever, 0 is fine. So it won't speak when you click on it, even if it is friendly. And that's really it. So now I can save this, restart my client and update my DBC just to make sure that this works without any issue. And I've got more viewer still running. Okay, sorry about that. When you are creating new creature display ID, you can test it without uploading your DBC to your server. If you want to use the display ID on NPCs, you will actually need to upload it. So this is our new display ID. I haven't uploaded my DBC on server yet, but I don't really have to because for morph command, this works fine. So we can see that it works. I've got correct model, I've got correct texture, I am half transparent because we have set lower opacity here. And there is, I think, no bot setup, no bot, okay. So I can spawn figurine, morph it, and when I start hitting it, if I can hit it actually, you can see that there is no bot coming out of that figurine. There's no bot here because I have set bot to 4. If I have set bot to 3, bot would be black, 2 would be green bot, 1 would be red bot, okay? So it works. Now, if you want to use this display ID for NPCs as well, so you want to spawn an NPC with this display ID on it, you need to do one more thing, and that's going to database, to Word database, to CreatureModelInfo table, and make sure that your display ID is there, because if you create a new display ID, it won't be here. You can see that this display ID doesn't have setting in CreatureModelInfo, it doesn't have any record here, and this means that server will refuse to spawn such creature. So if you want to make this work for creatures, just create a new row in this table with your new custom display ID. Now this display ID does exist in this table, and if I had uploaded my updated DBC on server, I would be able to use, and restart server, I would be able to use this display ID for NPCs. If you don't do this, if you don't add your new display ID into this table as well as into CreatureDisplayInfo, server will say that creature has incorrect display ID or something like that, and server will actually refuse to spawn such creature. Okay, so this is something you need to always do. If you create new display ID, add record into model info as well. Now in model info there is this bounding radius and combat reach. I don't know for sure how they work, but I know that they are important. So if you are making some bigger model, you will definitely want to use higher value. I think that zeros shouldn't really be used, or perhaps they can be, but as you can see, there is quite often some value which is higher than just 0. So take a look at this, and what I usually end up using in my display IDs, as you can see, I'm usually using combat reach 1 and bounding radius 0.5, and that just works fine, but for some larger models you may want to use different values, okay? This will just affect how far away from you can creature stand while hitting you. So for example, if you have some huge inferno or some huge demon in general, he shouldn't need to be like this close to you to be able to hit you. He may be able to hit you with melee attacks, for example, even just from here. So that's what this is for basically. So that's it guys, that's just introduction to Creature Display Info, how to create a new display ID if you've got already your textures and if you've got already model in CreatureModelData.dbc. Now if you want to make creatures with equipment, that's something for a follow-up video. So thanks for watching guys, I hope this was useful for you, and as always, happy modding.